On June 24, 2025, a tense and expectant mood settled over Capitol Hill. Lawmakers, staffers, and journalists all braced themselves for what was expected to be a day of high-stakes classified briefings. The focus: the recent U.S. airstrikes against Iran, a military operation that had sent shockwaves through Washington and the world. These briefings were to be Congress's first real look at the intelligence, motivations, and potential consequences behind a military action that risked igniting a much wider conflict in the Middle East. For many on the Hill, this was a critical moment to assess the administration's strategy and the true impact of the strikes. Lawmakers, who hold the constitutional power to declare war, were prepared to demand answers. They wanted details about the strikes themselves, the extent of the damage to Iran's nuclear program, and, most urgently, the risks now facing U.S. troops and allies in the region. The stakes could not have been higher. But just hours before the sessions were set to begin, everything changed. The briefings were abruptly canceled, no explanation given, no rescheduling offered. The sudden silence was as unsettling as it was unexpected. The White House's silence was deafening, fueling suspicion and anger among lawmakers from both parties. The lack of communication left many feeling blindsided and deeply uneasy about what might be unfolding behind closed doors. This wasn't a minor delay or a simple scheduling issue. It was a breakdown in the process that's supposed to keep Congress informed and involved during moments of military crisis. The abrupt cancellation sent a chilling message about the administration's willingness to bypass legislative oversight. Democrats, already frustrated by what they saw as repeated attempts to sideline Congress, viewed the cancellation as a dangerous evasion of accountability. Many worried that the administration was deliberately keeping them in the dark about critical national security decisions. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer called the move outrageous and openly questioned what the administration was hiding. He demanded immediate answers, warning that democracy itself was at risk if Congress was shut out of decisions about war and peace. The focus quickly shifted from Iran to a deepening rift between Congress and the White House. The canceled briefing became the latest flashpoint in a long-running struggle over transparency and executive power. Lawmakers wondered aloud if the administration was concealing a failed mission, downplaying the risks to American lives, or simply asserting unchecked authority in a time of crisis. The uncertainty only heightened the sense of alarm. The canceled briefing quickly became a symbol of a much larger constitutional struggle over war powers, a struggle that has defined American democracy for generations. The question of who decides when the nation goes to war was suddenly front and center. Trust and transparency were now at the center of a growing crisis on Capitol Hill, as lawmakers and the public alike demanded to know, who is really in charge when the nation stands on the brink of war? The uproar over the canceled briefing was immediate and intense, echoing through the halls of Congress and across the nation's airwaves. Lawmakers from both parties demanded answers, frustrated by the administration's lack of transparency at a moment of escalating crisis. Their outrage followed a weekend marked by a dramatic surge in violence between the United States and Iran, with tensions reaching a boiling point after months of simmering hostilities. In a bold and unexpected move, the U.S. military launched coordinated airstrikes on 3 of Iran's most critical nuclear sites, targeting facilities believed to be central to Iran's weapons development program. The operation was designed to send a powerful message and disrupt Iran's nuclear ambitions. President Trump quickly took to the podium, hailing the mission as a resounding success. However, leaked intelligence reports painted a more complicated picture, suggesting that, while the strikes caused significant damage, they only set back Iran's program by a matter of months, not years as publicly claimed. This stark contrast between the administration's confident public statements and the more sobering classified assessments fueled deep skepticism among members of Congress, who worried about being misled during a critical moment. Iran's response was swift. The regime launched a barrage of missiles at a U.S. military base in Qatar. Although there were no reported casualties, the attack was a clear signal that Iran was willing to escalate the conflict further if provoked. Hopes for de-escalation were dashed when a brief ceasefire collapsed. Israel, citing imminent threats, struck Iranian positions in Syria, igniting new violence and plunging the region into even greater instability. Amid the chaos, confusion, and accusations mounted, Iranian officials denied launching additional missiles while international media scrambled to verify conflicting reports, adding to the uncertainty. With military forces on high alert and borders tightening, the entire region seemed to teeter on the brink of a much wider war. The White House's continued silence only deepened the sense of unease and alarm. Lawmakers, feeling increasingly sidelined, expressed frustration at being shut out of critical decisions during a live and rapidly evolving crisis, unable to exercise their constitutional oversight responsibilities. As the situation grew more dangerous by the hour, Congress was asked to place its trust in the administration without access to the full picture, raising concerns about accountability and the risks of unchecked executive power. With the stakes higher than ever, and the demand for clear answers growing louder, the nation faced a pivotal moment, one that would test the limits of trust, leadership, and the balance of power in a time of crisis. The anger over the canceled briefing goes to the heart of American democracy. The Constitution splits war powers between Congress and the President to prevent unilateral action. The President leads the military, but only Congress can declare war and fund it. This system demands partnership and constant communication, especially in times of conflict. Lawmakers expect to be consulted and kept informed, not as a courtesy, but as a constitutional right. The Iran strikes, launched without real consultation, and the canceled briefing, felt like a direct attack on this balance. Even some Republicans joined Democrats in warning against treating Congress as irrelevant. The canceled briefing became a symbol of a deeper crisis in the system of checks and balances. The struggle over war powers isn't new. After Vietnam, Congress passed the War Powers Act to reclaim its role in military decisions. The law requires the President to notify Congress within 48 hours of military action and limits deployments without congressional approval. The Trump administration notified Congress after the Iran strikes, but critics say that's not enough. True oversight means real consultation before action, not just paperwork after the fact. Democrats argue that major strikes require full briefings and explicit authorization. Presidents have long resisted the War Powers Act, calling it unconstitutional, but Congress sees it as essential. The current standoff is a test of whether the law and Congress's authority still matter. Lawmakers are using every tool they have to reassert their power before the U.S. is drawn deeper into conflict. The canceled briefing unleashed a wave of outrage, especially from Democrats. They accused the White House of hiding the truth, not just about the meeting, but about the entire process. Reports surfaced that Republican leaders and Israeli officials were briefed before Congress, fueling suspicions of partisanship. Democratic leaders charged the administration with dodging tough questions about the mission's effectiveness and the risks to U.S. troops. They demanded facts, not spin, and called the lack of information a dereliction of duty. The administration's refusal to provide a full briefing deepened distrust and raised fears of political motives overriding national security. For Congress, this was about more than politics. It was about the integrity of the decision-making process. Under pressure, the White House blamed the canceled briefing on key cabinet members attending a NATO summit. They promised to reschedule, but Democrats saw this as a flimsy excuse. Deputies could have briefed Congress. The delay looked like a tactic to control the narrative and avoid immediate scrutiny. House Speaker Mike Johnson defended the administration, insisting the president acted within his authority. Some Republicans, however, joined Democrats in demanding more consultation, revealing cracks in party unity. The debate over war powers was no longer just partisan, it was institutional. Congress didn't just complain, they acted. Bipartisan groups in both chambers introduced war powers resolutions to block further unauthorized military action against Iran. In the Senate, Tim Kaine, Adam Schiff, and Andy Kim led a narrowly focused resolution, careful not to limit support for Israel. In the House, Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie, progressive and libertarian, teamed up, showing this was bigger than party lines. These resolutions forced a public debate the White House had tried to avoid. Lawmakers used their constitutional power to demand accountability and transparency. Whether the resolutions pass or not, Congress sent a clear message: it will not be sidelined on matters of war. The fight was about reclaiming Congress's rightful role in decisions of war and peace. The Iran crisis revived memories of the Iraq War, bold claims, ambiguous intelligence, and a rush to conflict. The lesson from Iraq: acting on flawed intelligence can have catastrophic consequences. Lawmakers, haunted by past mistakes, demanded concrete evidence and full transparency. The canceled briefing denied them the chance to scrutinize the intelligence themselves. Many fear the administration is cherry-picking data to fit its narrative, just as critics said happened before Iraq. Congress now seeks narrowly defined authorizations, determined not to write another blank check for war. The push for oversight is a direct response to the hard lessons of the past. This isn't just a Washington power struggle. It's about who holds the power to decide when America goes to war, and how those decisions are made. The debate reaches far beyond the halls of Congress or the Oval Office. It touches the lives of every American, shaping the nation's future and the principles it stands for. The outcome of this struggle affects national security, the strength of our democracy, and the future of every citizen. Whether you're a student, a parent, a service member, or simply someone who cares about the country's direction, these decisions ripple through communities and generations. If a president can launch military strikes without meaningful oversight, it sets a dangerous precedent. It erodes the checks and balances that are meant to prevent rash or unilateral action, and it concentrates too much power in one office. Without open congressional debate, decisions risk being made in an echo chamber, where dissenting voices are silenced and critical perspectives are ignored. This can lead to costly mistakes, both in terms of lives and resources. Transparency is essential for public trust and democratic legitimacy. When leaders are held accountable, and the public is informed, the nation is stronger and more united. When information is withheld, suspicion grows, and support for military action weakens. People begin to question motives and lose faith in their leaders, which can divide the country at critical moments. This fight is about Congress's right and the public's right to know why Americans may be sent to war, and to have a say in those decisions. It's about ensuring that no single person can make such a grave choice alone. If Congress fails to assert its authority, it risks being sidelined forever on the most critical decisions a nation can make. The consequences could last for generations, changing the very nature of American government. The struggle happening today will shape how future wars are waged, who gets to decide, and whether the American people have a voice in matters of life and death. Ensuring shared responsibility for war is a cornerstone of American democracy, and a vital safeguard for us all. The outcome of this debate will define the balance of power for years to come.